Have you ever felt that just that wave of information washing over you, that feeling of being totally overwhelmed, like you've taken in so much but haven't really got it? If that sounds familiar, well, you're in the right place. Here at the Deep Dive, we try to give you a real shortcut, a way to get genuinely well informed on these big, important topics without drowning in the noise. We cut through to those key insights. And today, we're diving into something I think is truly transformative: mindful self compassion, or MSC. This isn't just some fluffy, feel good idea. It's actually a powerful approach to emotional well being, and it's got some serious scientific backing that's getting a lot of attention.
It really does. And for this deep dive, we're drawing on a pretty comprehensive report. It weaves together the latest theory, a lot of research, and really practical applications. It's a rich source, definitely. Our mission today is essentially to boil it down, pull out the core concepts, the techniques you can actually use, and maybe reveal some of the surprising benefits that come from cultivating this. By the end, you should have a really clear picture of what mindful self-compassion is all about and, crucially, how it could genuinely make a difference in your life.
Yeah, and maybe to frame it for everyone listening, let's start with the question we can all relate to. How do you talk to yourself? When you mess up or you're struggling, feeling like you're not good enough, what's that voice inside your head sound like? Is it harsh, critical, or is it maybe something kinder, more understanding? Because what we're exploring today offers a revolutionary, but actually quite simple, alternative to that constant self-judgment so many of us carry around. We all kind of get compassion when it's pointed outwards, right? That feeling of seeing someone else hurting and wanting to help, wanting to ease their suffering. It feels, well, human. But the really radical part of mindful self-compassion, as I understand it, is turning that exact same impulse inwards. Can you unpack that a bit, that first crucial step?
Absolutely. That's the core idea, really. Self-compassion suggests that maybe the most reliable support system isn't getting approval from others, but building one inside yourself. It's about giving yourself the same kindness, the same care, the same understanding you'd naturally offer a good friend, especially when you feel like you've failed, or you're feeling inadequate, or just plain suffering. Think about how you react to a friend in that situation. You're warm, right? Gentle, empathetic, you don't judge, you comfort them, encourage them. Self-compassion is just applying that same approach to yourself. Instead of meeting your own pain with, frustration or criticism or just trying to ignore it, it means actively choosing to soothe yourself, offering acceptance instead of beating yourself up. And the great thing is, this isn't some fixed trait you either have or don't. It's something inherent in us, a capacity we can actually cultivate, learn. It can transform that inner voice from an enemy into, well, a real ally.
And underpinning all of this, you mentioned mindfulness. That's the psychological bedrock, right?
Right.
At its core, mindfulness isn't just passively noticing things. It seems to have two key parts. First, it's about deliberately directing your attention, like holding a flashlight steady instead of letting it jump all over. And second, it's how you pay attention with openness, curiosity, acceptance, not judgment. That non-judgmental quality seems crucial for creating the space for compassion to actually arise. It's both a state, that clear, receptive presence, and a practice, something you can actively train, either formally, like focusing on your breath, or informally, just bringing that mindful quality to, say, washing the dishes.
Exactly. And when you put these two together, mindfulness and self-compassion, you get mindful self-compassion, or MSC. It's more than just adding them. They work in this really interesting synergistic sequence. Mindfulness comes first. It's that act of turning towards a difficult experience, but with a kind of loving awareness. Simply acknowledging, okay, I'm suffering right now. Then self-compassion is the next step. It's bringing that same loving awareness to yourself, the person who is experiencing the suffering. And the outcome of this beautiful blend, is often described as a warm, connected presence, even when things are tough. And it feeds itself, Mindfulness helps you notice the pain clearly. That noticing creates the space, the opportunity to respond with self-compassion. And when you meet your pain with kindness, remember you're not alone in feeling this way. It actually soothes your nervous system. It dials down the self-criticism, calms the emotional storm. This calmer inner state then makes it easier to be mindful next time. It's like an upward spiral, building emotional resilience.
It sounds like there were some key people who really figured this out, who laid the groundwork for this understanding. Who are the main figures we should know about in the world of MSC?
You're right, there are two key figures. This field really wouldn't be where it is without Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Christopher Germer. Dr. Neff, she's a researcher and associate professor at UT Austin. She was the pioneer, really, almost 2 decades ago. She did the first studies, developed the definition, the theoretical framework that everyone uses now. Then there's Dr. Christopher Journer. He's a clinical psychologist, very focused on bringing mindfulness into therapy. Around 2008, they started working together. They asked this really important question: could self-compassion be taught explicitly, like in a structured course, similar to something like mindfulness-based stress reduction? And that question led directly to them developing the 8-week Mindful Self-Compassion program, which has a lot of empirical support now. And then to really get this work out there, they co-founded the nonprofit Center for Mindful Self-Compassion back in 2012.
Okay, so we have a sense of what self-compassion is generally, but to really get it, we need to look at its core components. Dr. Neff's tripartite model seems really helpful here, like three essential legs of a stool, right? Can you walk us through those?
Yes, it's a very clear model. It breaks self-compassion down into 3 core components, and each one has sort of a positive pole and a negative pole. First, you've got self-kindness versus self-judgment. Self-kindness is really the heart of it emotionally. It's about being warm, supportive, understanding with yourself, actively soothing and comforting, offering that unconditional acceptance like you would to a good friend. The opposite pole, self-judgment, well, that's the harsh inner critic, that voice that's intolerant, attacks you for flaws, tells you to just suck it up instead of acknowledging your own needs. Second is common humanity versus isolation. This is more cognitive, a shift in how you see things. Common humanity is realizing that, hey, suffering, failing, feeling inadequate, that's just part of being human. Everyone goes through it. It reframes your personal struggle as something that connects you to others rather than setting you apart. Isolation, on the other hand, is that irrational feeling that it's just me, that you're the only one making these mistakes or feeling this pain. It makes everything feel so much worse. And the third one is mindfulness versus over-identification. Here, mindfulness is about holding your painful thoughts and feelings in a balanced way, seeing them clearly without getting totally swept away by them, but also without suppressing them. It creates the mental space you need to respond kindly. Over-identification is the opposite. You're fused with the negativity. You're lost in the drama, completely caught up in the emotion, losing all perspective.
That's a really useful way to break it down. And it highlights how these aren't separate things. They work together. It's a system. Mindfulness lets you see the pain without drowning in it. Common humanity reminds you you're not alone. And then self-kindness brings the act of care. They really boost each other. And it also brings up an important point. True self-compassion isn't just not being mean to yourself. It requires actively cultivating those positive sides, the kindness, the connection, the balanced awareness. Just stopping the self-criticism isn't quite the same as actively generating self-kindness, is it?
Exactly. That's a crucial distinction. Research, especially using the self-compassion scale Neff developed, even suggests these positive and negative aspects,
Yeah.
like self-kindness versus what they sometimes call self-coldness, might be distinct pathways, which means for helping people, the approach might differ. Someone might need to focus more on building self-kindness, while someone else might need to work on reducing that over-identification with negative thoughts. It's definitely multifaceted.
Okay, so let's tackle some of the things that might hold people back, the common worries or myths about self-compassion. Because understanding what it isn't seems just as important, especially around this idea of creating psychological safety.
Absolutely. These misconceptions pop up all the time, so it's good to clear them up. First, let's talk self-compassion versus self-esteem. Self-esteem is basically an evaluation of yourself, right? How good am I? Am I better than others? It often relies on success, on comparison. It feels good when it's high, but it's unstable. It can crash with failure, lead to narcissism, or make you defensive. Self-compassion offers a totally different source of self-worth. It's intrinsic. It comes from recognizing you're human, and all humans deserve kindness. It doesn't depend on being better than anyone else. So think of it like this. Self-esteem is conditional, fragile. Self-compassion is unconditional, resilient. Second big one, self-compassion versus self-pity. People worry self-compassion is just feeling sorry for yourself. But self-pity is actually quite different. It's isolating. Core me, I'm the only one. It tends to exaggerate problems, get lost in the drama, feel like a victim. Self-compassion is almost the opposite. That common humanity piece directly fights the isolation. Mindfulness prevents getting lost in exaggeration. It lets you say, wow, this is really hard right now, without falling into, why does this always happen to me? Research backs this up: less rumination, better mental health. And finally, self-compassion versus self-indulgence. This is the fear that being kind to yourself means letting yourself off the hook, becoming lazy, just eating cake all day. But self-indulgence is usually about short-term pleasure, often to avoid discomfort, even if it harms you long-term. Like binge-watching TV instead of dealing with stress. Self-compassion, however, is genuinely concerned with your long-term well-being, with alleviating suffering in a sustainable way. It's about wise action, not weakness. Think of a compassionate parent. They care about their child's long-term health, so they encourage vegetables, not just endless ice cream. Mindfulness helps you tell the difference between what you truly need and just a fleeting desire.
That leads perfectly into what might be the biggest myth, the idea that we need to be harsh with ourselves to stay motivated, that self-criticism is what drives success. A lot of us were raised on that idea, weren't we? Does that hold up?
It's a really persistent belief, but the evidence just doesn't support it. In fact, self-criticism often backfires as a motivator. It tends to undermine your confidence. It creates a fear of failure, which can paradoxically lead to more procrastination or avoiding challenges altogether. And physiologically, think about what's happening. When you criticize yourself, you're activating your body's threat system, fight or flight. You release stress hormones like cortisol. You become both the attacker and the one being attacked. That creates this chronic internal stress, which is exhausting and counterproductive. Self-compassion, on the other hand, motivates from a place of care, not fear. It's wanting the best for yourself, wanting to learn and grow because you value yourself, not because you feel inadequate. It creates that psychological safety we mentioned. When it's safe to fail, you're actually less afraid to try. So self-compassionate people often have high standards, but they don't destroy themselves when they don't meet them. This means they're more likely to persist after setbacks, take on new things, learn from mistakes. And because it feels safer to admit fault, they're actually more likely to take personal responsibility and even apologize when needed. At the end of the day, love and care are just much more sustainable motivators than fear.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered what it is, what it isn't, why the old way doesn't really work. But here's the part that really blows my mind. The bit our sources call this psychophysiological cascade. It's not just a mental shift. It sounds like being kind to yourself literally changes your body's chemistry, your physiology. That's huge. What does the science actually show here?
It's a huge. And the research is incredibly broad now. We see benefits stacking up across so many different areas: psychological, physiological, cognitive, even how we relate to others. It really demonstrates that cascade effect. So first, let's look at psychological and emotional well-being. The link is really strong here. Self-compassion consistently acts as a buffer against things like anxiety, depression, and stress. We see this across many studies, many populations. Higher self-compassion means lower distress. And programs like MSC have been shown to effectively reduce these symptoms, and the effects tend to last. It seems to work partly by tackling that negative self-talk, the rumination, the self-criticism. And overall, it just boosts emotional resilience, positive feelings, life satisfaction. It helps people cope better with major life challenges, divorce, illness, trauma. Second, the physiological and physical health outcomes. This is where that cascade really shows up. Self-compassion seems to directly counteract the body's stress response. Remember how self-criticism triggers the threat system? Well, self-compassion does the opposite. It activates what's sometimes called the mammalian caregiving system, which is linked to the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side. Research shows it can lead to lower cortisol levels after stress, reduced inflammation markers, even healthier heart rate variability, which is a sign of better emotional regulation and resilience. This shift also seems to encourage healthier habits. People higher in self-compassion tend to exercise more, eat better, stick to medical advice. Why? Probably because they handle setbacks better. If you slip up on your diet, you don't just give up in shame, you kindly encourage yourself to get back on track. There's even links to better immune function, improved sleep quality, and fewer reported physical symptoms. And finally, there are cognitive and interpersonal advantages. Contrary to the myth about being lazy, self-compassion is linked to greater personal responsibility. People are more willing to admit mistakes, learn from them, apologize. It fosters a motivation for self-improvement based on growth, not fear. And cognitively, it's associated with more flexibility in thinking, better working memory, even more creative problem solving. Interpersonally, it doesn't make you selfish. It actually makes you more available for others because you're meeting your own needs. You're less needy in relationships. Studies link it to being more caring, supportive, compromising partners. And it extends beyond close relationships, higher empathy, altruism, ability to see others' perspectives, forgiveness. It's like Kristen Neff says, the more open our hearts are to ourselves, the more we have to give others. It's a really holistic impact.
That's incredibly compelling. It really drives home that this isn't just a nice to have. It's fundamental to our well-being on so many levels, mind, body, relationships. So, okay, I think everyone listening is probably wondering, how do I actually do this? What are the practical steps? How do we start cultivating this mindful self-compassion?
Right, that's the crucial question. And MSC offers very concrete practices that bring all this theory to life. We can start with some informal ones you can use anytime, anywhere. A really simple but powerful one is the how would you treat a friend? Exercise. Just take a moment. Think about a time a good friend was really struggling or messed up. What did you say? What was your tone? Warm, supportive, right? Now, contrast that with how you typically talk to yourself in a similar situation. Often there's a huge difference. The exercise is simply noticing that gap and making a conscious intention to start talking to yourself, more like you would talk to that friend. Maybe just saying, it's okay, everyone makes mistakes. Then there's the self-compassion break. This is a go-to practice for difficult moments, and it has two main forms, tender and fierce. The tender version is for when you're feeling pain or stress. It has 3 steps. 1, mindfulness, acknowledge the pain. Silently say, this is a moment of suffering. 2, common humanity, connect with others. Remind yourself suffering is part of life, or I'm not alone in feeling this way. 3, self-kindness, offer yourself care. Maybe put a hand on your heart and say, may I be kind to myself, or may I give myself what I need right now. The fierce version is more for situations where you need strength, like setting a boundary or protecting yourself. 1, mindfulness, see the situation clearly. Affirm, I see the truth of what's happening here. 2, common humanity, draw strength from connection. I'm not alone. Others have faced this too. 3, self-kindness, commit to protective action. Maybe a fist over the heart saying, I will protect myself, or I will stand up for myself. Another useful tool is exploring self-compassion through writing. Pick an insecurity that bothers you. Write about it honestly. Then shift perspective. Write a letter to yourself from the viewpoint of an imaginary, unconditionally loving friend. What would they say? How would they offer kindness and acceptance? Then take time to slowly read that letter, really letting the compassionate words sink in. For those wanting to go deeper, there are also formal meditations. Loving kindness meditation, or metta, is a classic. You cultivate feelings of warmth and goodwill. You might start by directing phrases like, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering, towards someone you love easily. Then, you turn those same phrases towards yourself. May I be happy, may I be kind and gentle with myself, may I be at peace. Then you gradually expand the circle to neutral people, difficult people, and eventually all beings. There's also a self-compassionate body scan. It's like a standard body scan meditation, bringing awareness to different parts of the body, but you add a layer of kindness. As you notice sensations in each part, you also offer it wishes of well-being, like, may my feet be safe and well, or expressing gratitude for what that part does for you.
These all sound really practical and maybe surprisingly straightforward in concept, but changing ingrained habits, and it's often not that simple. Are there common bumps in the road, things people might encounter when they start practicing that feel unexpected?
That's a really important thing to bring up. Yes, there's something called the backdraft phenomena. Quite common, actually. Think about opening the door to a smoldering building, air rushes in, and flames can flare up. Sometimes when we've been really harsh or neglectful towards ourselves for a long time, the first deliberate acts of kindness can feel like opening an inner door. And what can rush out is a backlog of unacknowledged pain. Maybe intense sadness, anger, grief, shame, sometimes even old memories. It can feel confusing, even alarming. But it's crucial to understand this isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. Often it's a sign the practice is working. You're finally creating enough safety inside for these old wounds to come to the surface to be healed. The key when backdraft happens is to be gentle. Maybe shorten your practice time, go slower. And importantly, try to meet the backdraft itself with mindful self-compassion. Acknowledge the pain that's arising with kindness. It usually subsides over time as your capacity for self-compassion grows stronger.
Okay, so it's clear this has deep personal benefits, but it's also obviously having a ripple effect outwards. It's not just staying within individual practice. How is MSC showing up in professional fields and education, things like that?
Yeah, it's definitely moved beyond just individual self-help. The principles have been formalized and integrated in significant ways. The main way it's taught is through the Mindful Self-Compassion MSc program. That 8-week course developed by Neff and Germer we mentioned, it's structured, evidence-based, usually involves weekly sessions, maybe a half-day retreat. It mixes learning the concepts, doing the formal and informal practices, and group discussions. And the research on the program itself is strong. Participants consistently show increases in self-compassion, mindfulness, even compassion for others, life satisfaction, and corresponding decreases in depression, anxiety, stress. It really helps people learn to handle tough emotions differently and motivate themselves kindly. It's also being integrated into psychotherapy quite significantly. For therapists themselves, practicing self-compassion is seen as vital protection against burnout and compassion fatigue. It helps them stay resilient, and they model it for clients. For clients, therapists might directly teach MSc skills, asking things like, what do you need right now? Or guiding them through that treat yourself like a friend idea. It's a core part of approaches like compassion-focused therapy. And therapists are trained to help clients navigate that backdraft if it comes up. We also see it a lot in healthcare settings. Doctors, nurses, other providers, they're at high risk for burnout. Studies show higher self-compassion in healthcare workers is linked to less burnout, less stress, and actually more satisfaction in their compassion work. There's even a shorter, specialized training called Self-Compassion Training for Healthcare Communities, SCHC, designed for busy professionals. It shows good results in reducing stress and burnout. A key insight here is helping them differentiate empathy feeling with someone, which can be draining from compassion, which is feeling for someone with a desire to help, which is more sustainable. And lastly, it's making inroads in education. There's a rigorous training pathway for people who want to become certified MSc teachers, ensuring they have a deep personal grounding first. And importantly, there are adaptations of MSc being developed in research for adolescents and teens. The idea is to equip young people with these emotional resilience tools early on, hopefully fostering more self-kindness and connection as they navigate those challenging years.
This has been such a rich exploration. It really brings it all together. So if we were to synthesize the absolute core message here, it seems to be that self-compassion isn't weakness. It's a trainable skill. It's a brave way to meet suffering, our own suffering. It's about actively building that inner ally, creating that internal sense of safety that allows us to face our imperfections without crumbling.
Exactly. And perhaps the most stunning piece is that psychophysiological cascade effect, how the simple mental act of kindness towards yourself triggers this profound shift in your body's whole operating system, moving from threat and defense towards safety and care. That fundamental shift seems to be the engine driving all those incredible downstream benefits for our minds, our bodies, our thinking, our relationships. It's a really powerful, unified explanation for why this works.
Well, for anyone listening who feels inspired to explore this further, either learning more or starting a practice, there are some excellent resources out there. For foundational reading, Dr. Kristen Neff's book, Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, is a great starting point. And Dr. Christopher Germer's The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion offers a wonderful clinical perspective. And if you want really practical guided exercises, their joint workbook, the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook, is fantastic.
Definitely. And online, Dr. Neff's website, which is selfcompassion.org, has a wealth of resources, guided meditations you can listen to for free, exercises, links to research. It's very comprehensive. And the official home for the MSc program itself is the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion at centerformsse.org. That's where you can find information about courses, find trained teachers, and learn about the teacher training pathway if you're interested.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we always like to leave you with something to chew on, a final thought to mull over.
We've talked a lot about how self-compassion can transform your inner world, your health, your relationships, by creating this deep sense of psychological safety within yourself. So here's a thought. If cultivating this kind of inner safety allows us, as individuals, to face our flaws with kindness and connect more deeply with our shared humanity, what might happen if that same foundation of compassion, that same sense of safety, became the bedrock for how we interact more broadly, as communities, maybe even globally? What new possibilities might that unlock for all of us?